Okay, hello. Today is February 19th, 2023, and we'll talk about the important Romanian sculptor Constantin Brâncuși. This is the Romanian pronunciation. He is well known outside of the country as Constantin Brâncuși. People pronounce his name in various ways, but the Romanian pronunciation is Constantin Brâncuși, in the opinion of Volprix, the most important artist of the 20th century. It's hard to say something like this. This is his opinion. There were many important artists in the 20th century, but he was one of them. Let's read a little bit about him. So, Constantin Brâncuși, born February 19th, 1876, was a Romanian sculptor, painter, and photographer who made his career in France. Considered one of the most influential sculptors of the 20th century and the pioneer of modernism, Brâncuși is called the patriarch of modern sculpture. As a child, he displayed an aptitude for carving wooden farm tools. Formal studies took him first to Bucharest, then to Munich, then to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris from 1905 to 1907. His art emphasizes clean geometrical lines that balance forms inherent in his materials with the symbolic allusions of representational art. Brâncuși sought inspiration in non-European cultures as a source of primitive exoticism, as did Paul Gauguin, Pablo Picasso, André Derain, and others. However, other influences emerged from Romanian folk art, traceable through Byzantine and Dionysian traditions. I would say something about this being the so-called patriarch of modern sculpture. If there is something that makes me a little bit, how to say, a little bit uneasy, is exactly this. Because I think we had and have too much patriarchy in the world, and maybe we need some matriarchy. I mean, this masculinism, I think, is problematic in whatever field it manifests itself. This was the man, handsome young man, a photograph taken in Romania before he left for France. Here he is with a backpack, leaving the country. He actually left on foot towards Paris. It took him a whole New Year to arrive in Paris. But this was a man of destiny. He was moving towards, playing an important role in modern sculpture. As you see, he was dressed rather, in a seductive way as an urban dweller. He arrived at his folkish, attire in Paris. In other words, Brâncuși became a peasant in Paris. He didn't live as a peasant. As you can see, he was dressed, rather fashionably, and not as a peasant. Here he is, after he achieved a lot of success with a nice tie and, white shirt and all the rest. Here he is, a determined, very determined man who made it with sacrifices, because from what I read in Paris, he had to support himself, to survive with all kinds of little jobs, like washing dishes in a restaurant. And I learned that he invented a so-called, better way to quicker wash the dishes. So he had time to return to his studio in order to do art, because that's the reason he left Romania, to do art, not to wash dishes. So what do you think that method was? To use a hotter water. My God, the sacrifices artists make for art are sometimes incredible. He also practiced photography. He some of the best photographs of his works are actually his own. I think he even manufactured some kind of a black box, some kind of a primitive, camera himself. So what does this tell us? It tells us that in order to make great photographs, you don't need necessarily the greatest technology. You need some kind of apparatus to take the pictures, and if you have something to say and a good eye and a good sensitivity, you can take great pictures, even with a mere black box. Here he is. I'm absolutely sure, he made all the sacrifices in order to sculpt, because that was his destiny. This was his calling. And we can only admire him for this. Apparently, he even sang in the church, and I don't know if he is dressed here, for a church or not, but it's an exotic clothing nevertheless. I read he used to, have some kind of parties at home. He would entertain the elite of modern art. He was friends with James Joyce. He knew Alvar Aalto. He was invited at home in the garden at home and of Carola Gideon Welker and Siegfried Gideon. Important people in the field of art. And later on, when he crossed the ocean, he was invited at important art collectors in New York or around New York, Long Island, and so on. Here he is, working hard. But later in life, he had a rather unique non-activity after 60. I don't know, maybe for reasons of health, but he kind of stopped working at 60 and he died at 80 or 81. Here he is not, he's playing golf. And I think the gentleman with the black, I could be wrong, but it might be Eric Satie, the famous French composer. Anyway, he was already famous and in the company of very interesting people. This is one of his lovers. I forgot exactly who. He even came once to Romania with a much younger lady from Ireland, and he introduced her to the countrymen in his village as being his niece. Of course, she was not his niece. Some drawings of Brâncuși. I love this drawing. It's very pure and whimsical as well. This one also, I love this drawing. I mean, I think in a few lines he was able to, to understand visually, three kids. It's a very pure drawing, and it's not easy to do something like this, although it might appear that it is easy. Now here maybe some influence coming from Africa. This is a famous drawing. James Joyce, the great writer, asked him to make I think initially he asked Pablo Picasso and something happened anyway. In the end, afterwards he asked Brâncuși, and initially Brâncuși did a figurative portrait of James Joyce. And James Joyce didn't like it. He wanted something abstract. So he arrived at this drawing with a spiral. Yeah. studies, sketches for the keys. Some works, and now I will show one image of many works by him. The Table of Silence, which everybody knows, Romania and beyond Romania. Last year or 2 years ago, Stephen Hall wrote to me that he wants to come to Romania to see the Endless Column, which is not far away from the Table of Silence. The Prayer, 1907. Sleeping Mules, 1909. Moving towards the beginning of the world, as he called that quintessential work by him. The Kiss, 1910. Prometheus, 1911. Louis Kahn said that beginnings are in harmony with the human nature. Well, it seems that Brâncuși was also very interested in beginnings, like the egg. And, you know, here we have Prometheus. What would have been, you know, humankind, at least in the post-Greek era, without Prometheus? But let's hope that the effects of Prometheus stealing the fire from the gods and giving it to us will not have some very tragic consequences. Muse from 1912. Well, he had several muses. He loved women and women loved him, and he depicted them. The Kiss, 1912. Mademoiselle Pogani, 1913. Arch, 1915. Princess X, 1916. This sculpture, you know, stirred up some comments of all kinds because of its shape, and you know, was considered by some as being obscene. Sculpture for the Blind, Beginning of the World, 1916. A nice idea to make a sculpture for the blind. And it's titled The Beginning of the World. Beginning of the World is also a good one, from 1916. Torso of a Young Man, 1917. Sleeping Mules, 1917. The First Cry, also 1917. He had his theory about pedestals. You know, that the pedestal should have some sculptural character, but it shouldn't, you know, overwhelm the sculpture. It should be, even if bigger in dimensions like here, but somehow less close to that meta level that Wolf Prix thought that architecture should arrive at. I think also in terms, you know, in terms of art, in terms of sculpture, like in this case, the sculpture is in a way the flower of the plant we call the whole organism, pedestal plus the sculpture. So the sculpture, even if it's smaller than the pedestal, it should be closer to that fruition that we call art. And the pedestal has an intermediate role between the ground floor and the sculpture. By expressing ourselves maybe in metaphysical terms, the pedestal is somewhere between earth and sky. If the art we have the courage to say that is close to the sky, or if not, within the metaphysical sky. Madame L.R., Portrait de Mademoiselle L.R., 1918. View of the Artist Studio, 1918. But this is a gouache, I think, an artwork. It's not a photograph, although he took photographs as well. Golden Bird, 1920. He carved 27 birds, and he was asked at one point which bird he liked the most. And he named two, which shows that he didn't yet arrive at that essence of flight, because he was actually searching for the essence of flight, trying to depict birds. The Sorcerers, 1920. Head, 1920. Torso of a Young Girl, 1922. Bird in Space, 1923. Yes, his birds became more and more, spiritual, because he was getting closer and closer to the essence of flight. He thought that flight is a bliss. Bird in Space, 1923. So you see, it's a difference between the first bird I showed and this one. The cock. White negress. An interesting idea, no? I mean, it's paradoxical and oxymoronic, or white negress. 1926. Fish, 1926. Two lamps. He designed also lamps. Not bad, if we are to think that they are designed. I mean, maybe the base is so-called designed, although it's very simple, but the lamps themselves. So I guess, like Marcel Duchamp, he liked objets trouvés, found objects. The Signal, 1929. This is also interesting and rather not known. How is it called? The Signal, 1929. Illustration for Ilaria Voronca's Plants and Animals from 1929. Ilaria Voronca, an important Romanian poet. A very moving, innocent drawing. With top knot, 1929. We already saw this drawing, and let's read it again. Hupo with top knot. I don't even know what this means, but I like the drawing very much. Fish again, 1930. This is quite large. I saw it in a museum. It's excellent. It's the idea of a fish, the essence of a fish. The Kiss, the column, 1935. The Endless Column, 1937. Here it is in Târgu Jiu, in Romania. a magnificent work. I remember reading about this, that when it was an important symposium in Târgu Jiu, where many important art critics from all over the world were invited, and a Romanian critic, Dan Coma, said that this sculpture, this sculpture, the endless column, is a ring of conjunction between the earth and the sky. And an Austrian critic said that this it cannot be interpreted in religious terms, some kind of a redemptive effort of the artist to to rescue himself from the earth and aspire towards the sky, towards the above, because the earth doesn't have any guilt. So it's not about redemption, and the Romanian critic replied, yes, but the earth doesn't make sculptures. And both had a point, actually. Yes, the earth doesn't have any guilt, but the human being has within an Adam, who was banished from the paradise. And maybe a lot of art is some kind of an attempt to return to paradise. And the guilt is there. So yes, the earth shouldn't feel guilty towards the sky, but the earth doesn't make sculptures. It's the human being, the sculptor, who makes sculptures. The Gate of Keys, part of the sculptural ensemble in Târgu Jiu from 1938, so before the Second World War. A great, generous gift given by Brâncuși, this complex work. The Seal, 1943. Wisdom with a question mark, but we know it in Romania, cumințenia pământului, how to translate it? The wisdom of the earth, or in a way, but it's not really wisdom. Anyway, it's a great work by Brancusi. So it's from, unfortunately, I don't have the year when it was made. Golden Bird with the question mark again. That's how I found them on a website. Some of them towards the end of this aide-memoire with a question mark, maybe because the sculptor didn't give them names. So whoever created this list of images of his works didn't know how to name them. So he named them himself or herself. Mademoiselle Pogani, again with a question mark. Princess X. Colette. Nude. Prodigal Son. So was Brâncuși some kind of a prodigal son? Why this theme? Because this relates in a way to what I try to refer to about the discussion about the endless column. Maybe all human beings with a conscience or with a consciousness are prodigal sons or prodigal daughters. The newborn A museum for the, no. I stop here and now I go to the second presentation, second part of today's presentation, Brâncuși and architecture. Because we are talking two architects about architecture and this important sculptor of modern times. So, Brâncuși and architecture. Architecture and sculpture. I start with indirectly, obliquely, by showing, because I start from his thought that architecture is an inhabited sculpture. And I don't totally agree with him, because architecture has its own specificities. But a sculptural side or a sculptural attribute or sculptural qualities are important in architecture. But I wouldn't say so directly and so simply that a building is an inhabited sculpture. But that's what he thought. And because of it, I thought of beginning this short presentation, and it is short, with the buildings, if we are to call them buildings, by André Bloc, the founder of l'Architecture d'aujourd'hui, the important French architecture magazine, who was a sculptor. He actually studied engineering, but became a sculptor. And he created inhabited or inhabitable sculptures. They're actually buildings that you can enter. You could even, if you want, sleep there or live there. And they are sculptures. But they are not buildings in the common sense of the word. But again, let's take a look a little bit at this aspect, architecture and sculpture, by looking at a few very, very interesting works by André Bloc. So André Bloc, who was born in 1896 and died in 1966. This is a sculpture that could be a building. We are going to see more in detail. He builds several, not just one. Maybe I should not have begun with this kaleidoscope of images, but here it is, one of them. Is it a building? Well, I mean, in the sense that you can enter it, it is a building. Is it sculptural? Yes, it is sculptural, very much so. Is it a sculpture? In a way, it is. It's both a sculpture and a possible architecture. I find it very moving and enticing, but it's not what we usually think of a building. But it is a building. You can use it. You can enter it, and you can even live there. Now we see some bags there at the bottom, maybe some students in architecture or architects or maybe sculptors or who knows who visiting it. Architects are probably reluctant to call this architecture. But I do call it architecture. It's just that it's a different kind of architecture. And we cannot say that it is not very interesting. It is. And it's possible that Brâncuși should have called it architecture because it is an inhabitable sculpture. André Bloc, who never studied architecture, I don't even think he studied sculpture. He studied engineering. But he was a catalyst for architecture of the highest order. When he died, some of the most important architects of that time lamented his departure from this earth, because you see, there are such people who are animated by the immense love for architecture and interest in architecture, and they did and do a lot for architecture, like André Bloc did. Look, It's a space, no? It has a floor. You can put there a mattress, you can sleep there, you can work there, you can dance there, you can sing there, you can do many things. So it's a building, but it's an unusual building done by a sculptor. So it is an inhabited or inhabitable sculpture. Casa del Laberinto by André Bloc and Claude Parron. The centennial Claude Parron will be in 1 week on the 27th or 26th of February. This is a house built by André Bloc and Claude Parron. So the relationship with Brancusi is based on a statement by Brancusi that architecture is an inhabited or inhabitable sculpture. There it says André Bloc architect. He never studied architecture. La sculptura abitacolo di André Bloc, another, you see here, la sculptura abitacolo. So it's at the frontier between sculpture and architecture, and it's both. That's why I think Brancusi would have thought that this is architecture because it is inhabitable. And as we can see, someone is there, maybe André Bloc himself. I don't know. Now, La Tour Meudon, another work by André Bloc, remarkable. I wish architects would do works as interesting as this one. Is it a building? Yes. Is it a sculpture? Yes. Is it architecture? Yes. Of a curious kind, but it's architecture in the sense that it is a usable building, and you can see pictures of its inside, but towards the outside is so sculptural that we hesitate to call it architecture. But you see, you can get in. Obviously, the man loved architecture and he loved buildings. And he carved this giant sculpture into a building. And he carved the building into a giant sculpture. André Bloc. I love it. Of course, it's not for the bourgeois, there is no glass at the windows. There is no kitchen. There are no, there isn't the paraphernalia of comfort that the bourgeois likes. But it could be used as a building. And now, what's going on? I should have put here. Now we go to, I prepared this rather in a hurry. I should have said the next building that I show is a Wolfprix and Kopfhimmelblau, because for Wolfprix, as I already mentioned, Brâncuși was the most important artist of the 20th century. And now we are going to see a part of this large building that he built that could be related to the work of Brâncuși. Is this part here, although it is broken, so to speak, it's eroded, but from a different point of view, like here, it's almost like an egg, the egg or the beginning of the world, standing vertically, but then excavated within or inscavated, if there is such a word. It is rather strange that Wolfprix always said that he wants to build an architecture of complexity, while Brâncuși, whom he admired so much, said the opposite. He was searching for simplicity. And he thought that simplicity is a resolved complexity. So here we have the architect of complexity admiring the sculptor of simplicity. I would have been curious to know what Brâncuși would have thought of this work. Volprix even made a proposal, I don't, probably on a voluntary basis, for a museum for Brâncuși in Târgu Jiu. I didn't see though that project, but I was told he made a proposal because he does love Constantin Brâncuși. There is no doubt. Now the fluidity that in this case Volprix worked with is not really explicitly connected with Brâncuși, but as we saw here in this picture, it's almost an approximation of the beginning of the world, that sculpture for the blind that Brâncuși made. Now you are going to see a project I did many years ago for a competition, a museum for the birds of Constantin Brâncuși. And this is the drawing I made. This was before the arrival of the digital culture in architecture. And I placed the superior part of the drawing all the birds that he sculpted. Then you see a longitudinal section through the building, then a cross section, the side view, and then at the bottom is the plan of the museum. But I will read a short text about what I did. I was typing it with a manual typewriter, and it needs some editing, but I'll read it to you. All his life, Brâncuși tried to find the essence of flight. He made 27 birds, more and more perfect, more and more spiritual. First, he made 7 wonder birds, then 4 gold birds, and finally 16 birds in flight. He was never satisfied, but this was because he had a giant purpose, to express into a physical form the spirit of the flight. How to do a museum for his birds? I thought that it must be somehow a mystical place for a ritual initiation into the mysteries of the spiritual flight. A trip to there where the sky and the earth meet together. I imagined 4 sequences. First, the entrance, like in a tomb. Second, a narrow corridor without light. Third, a big room like a maternal uterus, like a womb, top lit only, with the birds in line, one after the other, in the same order the sculptor made them. Fourth, an outside view, the beach, the sky, the sea, and maybe some birds, real birds, flying to the infinite. Finally, I observed, interesting coincidence, that the museum brought little by little the shape of his birds. And you see in the plan that actually this happened unconsciously. I didn't intend to arrive here, but trying to accommodate the 27 birds and, with the skylights, identifying the 3 periods in his, work, devotional work to this theme, birds in flight, I arrived slowly to this horizontal bird, which is the museum. But you see in the section, the longitudinal section, how things, were to happen. And then here I made a sketch, manual drawing, of course. On the left, the bottom, the entrance like in a tomb, then the dark corridor, then the maternal womb, the big room with the 27 birds aligned, and then you exit the museum, and on some kind of a balcony, you can contemplate the sea, the sky, and maybe some real birds. Now, flying to the infinite or who knows where. Now, Span, Span is an architecture group. It's a partnership between Matias del Campo and Sandra Menninger. They won the competition, a competition I launched a number of years ago for a new museum for Constantin Brâncuși in Paris to replace the building built by Renzo Piano, which I consider inadequate for properly representing the spirit of Constantin Brâncuși, the spirit of the works of Constantin Brâncuși. I even invited Renzo Piano, but of course he didn't participate. But Matias del Campo and Sandra Menninger won the first prize. Unfortunately, my website was ruined by Yahoo from, that I rent the website from Yahoo, and they made some technical so-called improvements, and now all the images cannot be seen. And I have about 2,000 projects there. I'm mad at them. I couldn't extract images from that competition. I found the works of Span on the web, but low resolution. I would have liked to show other projects because more projects were sent, some of them very interesting, but impossible because the website was, I hope, temporarily ruined by Yahoo. Here you see the site plan of the project of Span, and it's a very, here is on the north side, Centre Georges Pompidou by Renzo Piano and Sir Richard Rogers and Peter Rice, and there was another architect whose name unfortunately I forgot. They won the competition and they built it, Centre Beaubourg or Centre Georges Pompidou. This is the proposal of Span, and this is where the building by Renzo Piano now is. I'm sorry for the pictures. They are not very easily seen, but you get some kind of an idea, but I don't have the text written by Span. What is very interesting is that the project they made for this competition, Matias del Campo wrote to me that 2 years later, he considered this project the grandfather of the project with which they won the Austrian pavilion at the World Exhibition in Shanghai, I think in 2012. And, I like this relationship over a span of 2 years. Here is a section, in my opinion, here the ceiling was a little bit too low for Brâncuși, for his sculptures, but the plan and I hope I have, yeah, they are a little bit hard to see, and I apologize. I would direct you towards the website, icarch.us, but I checked in the morning and there were no images. They said that they will restore them, but I don't know when. The museum essentially is this one, and what you see on the left is Centre Georges Pompidou, a digital rendering. But this was supposed to be the museum as conceived by Matias del Campo and Sandra Menninger. And you see it here, where the landscape becomes architecture and architecture becomes landscape. And what you see here on the right are the constitutive parts that compose this organic, roofing of the building. You see the birds of Brâncuși here in this rendering of them, and here is another rendering that they sent us. Now I showed a skyscraper built by Ginny Gang, Studio Gang in Chicago, which has insinuations of the motif of the endless column that we saw already. This is apparently the tallest building ever built by a lady, by a woman. Bravo to Ginny Gang. And I said 2 years ago in March, Ginny Gang was with us here on this Zoom platform, and we even sang happy birthday to her. and you can see that recording on YouTube. And you see here, it's the endless column, not just bidimensionally present on this portion of the facade, but you see also in the volume of the towers, and not with the same proportions, not with the same oblique lines, but it's the motif of the endless column. And it is indeed a huge, a very, very tall skyscraper that Ginny Gang and Studio Gang built in Chicago. You see here, I didn't write the text. This is the tallest building in the world designed by a female architect. And you see here, insinuations of the endless column in the building that was built in Chicago. And now I end this short presentation with the work that was built in Romania. Oh no, I don't understand. I really don't understand what happened, because I included the work by Stefan Dorin. I don't understand. It's possible I erase it. I just don't believe it. Anyway, we have to stop here. I'm very sorry about this.